Good afternoon, namaskar, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Embassy of India, I welcome all of you at today's event on hydrogen and its derivative. Green hydrogen is a very important topic for both the countries, Germany and India, and very crucial for decarbonization and green transition. We are very happy to collaborate with ThyssenKrupp and World Energy Council in organizing this event, and I express my sincere thanks to them. Now I request Dr. Carsten Rolle, Director of World Energy Council, to come, who will moderate today's event. Dr. Rolle, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Sharma. Dear Ambassador Pavantani Harish, dear members of Parliament, hopefully in a minute, dear Mr. Nicolin, Mr. Landsmann, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us, for coming to this event. It's really a great occasion for me, and I think it is just in time to have it, this bilateral event on hydrogen, now 5 months after India has just announced and published its green hydrogen mission. And in the days where we wait for the German update of the hydrogen strategy, and then later the input strategy is still to come. So in the middle of these two, I think it's the right time to have a closer discussion that we will have, and I'm very grateful to see so many of you here. Now, the only thing I want to do before I hand over to the ambassador is to say thank you. Thank you to both partners, the Embassy, Excellency. It's great that we can do this event in person here after a long time of Teams and other meetings. You see the room is full, that there is a big demand for exchange, for having these discussions. Thank you very much for partnering with us. And in fact, the same thanks to ThyssenKrupp, the partner that is helping to make all this possible today. With this, Ambassador, I'd like to hand it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. At the outset, I want to thank Dr. Carsten Rolle for your partnership in facilitating this, and of course to ThyssenKrupp, Dr. Landsmann, for facilitating this meeting. I think this gathering of industry professionals is very timely. Also thanks to Dr. Nicole for your presence and BMWK's support for this initiative. I must say from the beginning, BMWK has been a very important partner as we sought to give a specific focus on green hydrogen. And of course, Honorable Till Mansman and your predecessor, Mr. Stephen Kaufman, both of you, with a focus on research, have been instrumental in bringing this partnership to the fore and specifically raising the profile of green hydrogen and its importance in the overall economic order of things as we prepare for a green energy transition. Once again, all members of the industry from India who came all the way and from Germany who are here, thank you very much for your presence. I must recount at the outset, I have done 1.5 years here as ambassador, and when I came here in late 2021, the one thing that struck me as very odd was the fact that Germany had a network of partnerships that were green hydrogen partnerships, and almost each one of them was with hydrocarbon producers. They had a great green hydrogen partnership with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, with Australia, with countries in Africa, and Russia. And the one thing that I found very odd was, here we are, India and Germany, we are not hydrocarbon producers, but we are large hydrocarbon consumers. And India, like Germany, depends on imports for almost 80% of its hydrocarbon needs. And lo and behold, we don't have a solid a green hydrogen partnership. And that is when I approached the BMWK, the Foreign Office, and the Chancellery to say that as we prepare for the meeting of our leaders in the intergovernmental consultations last May, we need to address this quickly because this will be a key element of our green energy transition. And I'm thankful to BMWK and the Chancellery for their great support and the Foreign Office. that has resulted in the formation of the Green Hydrogen Task Force between our two countries. And so ably run by the Energy Forum. Tobias is around somewhere, and he has taken the initiative in bringing members of our industry closer to German industry. Why is this important? It's important because India is in a growth phase, and our focus is to meet our commitments made by our Prime Minister at Glasgow to increase our renewable energy outlay from the current around 170 gigawatts to 500 gigawatts by 2030. But more importantly, in this growth phase, we don't want to build the usual way and then have to decarbonize it all over again. So the focus is not exactly, as I learned from a lot of my industry friends who have met today, they tell me the focus is not on decarbonization, but restructuring our industry. And that's a very apt theme. And I'll explain why I think it is very important. I have been talking to our industry leaders who are here from this sector. And what I've understood also is that a lot of our imports of LNG, and we do about $25 billion of imports, this is primarily for hydrogen-related molecules in the industry, whether it is for fertilizers or for in other fields. It is with a primary focus on hydrogen. So fundamentally, it is about restructuring our industry. I had the pleasure to meet with the head of the new German Center for the Transformation of Chemistry, a new organization that Germany is looking at, to restructure the entire industry that we have with a focus on transformation of the entire chemistry processes in various industries. And I think it is something similar that we would be doing with our focus on green hydrogen, which is not just about energy transition, but an industrial transition. It's about restructuring our industrial processes in a very fundamental way. Why is Germany important in this? Germany is and has been not only a primary development partner of choice for us since the 1950s, it has been a very important science and technology partner. And in this industry, a lot of the technology involved is still in the evolution phase and has not yet been fully commercialized. Having said this, India is also in a very unique position to be a partner of choice for Germany. India has the largest electric grid, which will by 2030 have 500 gigawatts of renewable energy. There is no other single grid on the planet which will have 500 gigawatts of renewable energy. And it is with this that we have here our members of the industry who will speak to you about their efforts to see how we can have carbon-free energy, not just a carbon-reduced energy, but carbon-free production of electricity, the kind of processes they have formulated, which will lead us to a greater resilience in the way we do our processes. Friends, 2 years of the pandemic and 1 year of the conflict in Europe has meant that we need to relook at the way we have done business. Our supply chains have failed us during the pandemic and thereafter. The renewable energy industry, which was once a thriving industry in the first decade of this century, of course, has migrated elsewhere. And we have a situation where the concentration of various aspects of the solar industry, whether it is wafers or ingots or modules, is in the range of 85% to 95% concentrated in one country, even more so in one province in the country, and even more so on one company in some instances. This high level of dependence on one jurisdiction, province, or company is not tenable if every country on the planet simultaneously is moving towards energy transition and is moving towards ensuring that we have resilient supply chains. It is with this in mind that our Prime Minister and my government had focused on having a production-linked incentive which will encourage production in India of the entire solar supply chain, starting from sand to wafer. And we have already had 2 rounds of the production-linked incentives which have gone through a tender process. And we are confident that this will move ahead because we have studied the industry. And we found that the only sector, the only component of cost where we were not competitive with the lowest cost producer globally was the cost of investment. And in every other sector we were competitive. To cover this cost of investment, the production-linked incentive that the government is offering will encourage producers, and I can say many of the Indian producers who have won tenders in the production-linked incentives, they are partnering with German technology providers and German technology consultants to be able to execute their plans. So Germany is a partner of choice for us and very important. I would also now like to talk a little bit about why it is important that we keep our markets open and beyond protectionism. We have, in the last few months, seen Germany opening up in terms of tenders for import of green hydrogen and green ammonia. We have had certain issues in these tenders which we have pointed out to the ministry and HINTCO, and we are happy that they are looking seriously at some of these to facilitate and smoothen trade. The situation in countries are different. India is a single grid, so the difference, the distance between the place of production of solar energy and the place of production of green ammonia in many instances will be more than 500 kilometers, so having a distance limit would not be logical because ammonia is produced close to a port. We don't want to increase the carbon footprint of ammonia produced close to the place of solar energy and transported by truck or train, increasing its carbon footprint. Likewise, we do not have a separate grid for green energy. It is not feasible. Though we have the largest grid and we hope to bring it to 500 gigawatts of green energy in our grid by 2030. So some of these conditionalities, these are initial days yet, but we are thankful to BMWK and H2 Global for looking at some of these. Our companies want to be integrated globally on this. They want to have and be partners with companies across. They will make available green hydrogen required for decarbonization in India. At the same time, they also want to partner with friends and companies in jurisdictions like Germany, where they can be competitive and can be competitive providers of choice for green hydrogen and green ammonia. In this regard, I'm thankful that we have Greenco here, and they already have an agreement with Uniper for supply of green ammonia. And we look forward for more such collaborations because we believe that we are becoming green not because of government incentives or government diktat or because of subsidies. We are going green because it makes commercial and economic sense to do so. And that is the primary motive. As we speak, the costs of solar energy have gone down drastically. It is much cheaper than coal. The plant load factor is being improved by having and by producing carbon-free electricity through pumped storage systems across the country and at giga scale. So I think these are new initiatives where we are not going down the route of battery storage with its own set of issues of critical minerals and materials and excessive dependence on supply chains, again limited to 1 or 2 jurisdictions. But we are seeking out solutions through a spirit of innovation and reliability where we can replicate these at scale to meet our requirements. I'm confident that India and Indian business and industry will emerge successful in their ventures, and we will be able to not only focus on aggressively decarbonizing our industry where we have already gone, but ensure that our growth phase will not be like that of other countries, but it will be a carbon-friendly growth where we would not have the pressure to decarbonize after going down the route of a carbonized growth. I want to thank you for your presence. I look forward to the wonderful discussions that we are going to see, and I wish you all the best for the participants of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I think that was really an excellent start off for this conference, and I was really amazed how deep you really touched most of the issues that we want to discuss already in your impulse today. Also addressing, I think, the huge chances of further cooperation, bilateral cooperation of Germany and India. Obviously, the world is bigger, there are big markets, Eastern Asia and North America. And that's why it is so important, I think, that we think of the long tradition, the good tradition of partnerships India and Germany have for more than a century, I think. Now, to build on these partnerships and to frame these partnerships, I'm very glad that Dr. Andreas Nicolin is with us. Mr. Nicolin is the Deputy Director General in the Foreign Trade Policy Directorate of the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. And maybe he might allude already what we might expect from the updated hydrogen strategy. Let's see. Please, Nicolin, the floor is yours.
Dear Excellency, Ambassador Harris, dear Mr. Rolle, dear Mr. Landsmann, ladies and gentlemen. It's a huge pleasure and an honor to be here today and to outline my ministry's view on the relevance of hydrogen import for Germany and the role of international cooperation. Of course, hydrogen is an essential element in achieving our target of becoming climate neutral by 2045. One important channel is decarbonization. The ambassador has raised it before. There is firstly our industry, the sectors which cannot be directly electrified, for example, steel industry and parts of chemical industry, and there are no other technologies than hydrogen for these sectors. Secondly, hydrogen and its derivatives are also important for the decarbonization in air and sea transport. And thirdly, on the way towards a fully decarbonized power generation, hydrogen can also help balancing out the volatile renewable energies. We know that we need to take decisive measures to ramp up the hydrogen economy as quickly as possible. And the National Hydrogen Strategy, which has been mentioned before, of our government outlines our vision of how the ramp up can accelerate it, and the update you are very curiously asking about of the strategy will be updated soon. It will appear soon. The urgency to ramp up the hydrogen economy has also been demonstrated, of course, to us by the Russian aggression towards Ukraine, and apart from the tragedy of its impacts, it has also highlighted the weakness of the current energy system that relies on a relatively limited number of fossil fuel exporting countries and huge dependencies of importing countries. Thus, we have to accelerate the energy transition process in order to remove these dependencies. However, it is also clear that Germany will rely on the import of hydrogen and derivatives to cover its demand. We expect an import demand of about 45 to 90 terawatt hours by 2030, which corresponds to a share of 50 to 70% of the total national demand. These numbers are expected to increase even further in the years afterwards. Of course, this immense import demand can create new critical dependencies. Therefore, we are promoting an approach of diversified imports from countries in Europe, but also from other reliable partner countries, and India is, of course, one of the most prominent in this regard. We are confident that green hydrogen supply will be available by many regions and countries with sufficient availability of wind, sun and water. And just outside we have seen a very interesting pilot project installed by our industry companies. To promote imports from Europe, we push for a fast completion of the European hydrogen pipeline. This will be crucial for cheap transport within Europe. However, additional imports from reliable countries outside Europe will be needed, since the European hydrogen demand will most likely exceed the production potential. So import from countries outside Europe will be even more important as long as the Europe pipeline is not realized. To address these issues in more details, my ministry is working on an import strategy, which is still work in progress. The strategy will outline the importance of imports. However, it will not favor or exclude any countries from being potential future hydrogen suppliers. We need all reliable partners, and as stressed before, India is a very prominent partner in this regard. The strategy will be important for devising future funding instruments for international cooperation that are needed at different stages of the hydrogen market ramp-up. In the past 2 years, we have already implemented effective instruments to kickstart the import and to promote the cooperation with close partners like India. In particular, the double auction system H2 Global, which has already mentioned before, is a decisive funding instrument for kickstarting import of green hydrogen, and it's already working. H2 Global creates an artificial global marketplace for green hydrogen by removing the main hurdles for international trading. For suppliers, it provides investment certainty and contributes to the bankability of the projects. In addition, it creates demand for the delivered green hydrogen derivatives by making them more cost competitive in comparison to their fossil-based alternatives. The first auction round for green ammonia has already taken place, and contracts will be concluded as early as fall this year. We expect the first deliveries of green hydrogen derivatives in 2025. And applications for the second tender for delivering of derivatives will start which start in 2026-27, can be made next year. Applications from Indian projects are, of course, highly welcome. For global trade, worldwide acknowledged standards for clean and renewable hydrogen will be essential. The G7 Hydrogen Action Pact aims to address precisely this. Here we can take further decisive steps together. It is thus clear that the market ramp-up of green hydrogen requires reliable international cooperation, and with India we have a strong and reliable partner with the ambition to become a global green hydrogen export hub, as the ambassador pointed out before. We are happy to work closely together on ramping up our hydrogen economies and trade. Last year, there has been a meeting of Minister Habeck and Minister Singh, in which the Indo-German Green Hydrogen Task Force has been established within the framework of our long-existing energy partnership, the so-called Indo-German Energy Forum. And the goal is to complement the Indian National Hydrogen Mission in mapping out further ideas how to establish a hydrogen economy that will pave the way for future trade in green hydrogen and its derivatives. And I'm very happy that I will be going to India in a couple of weeks' time to co-chair this hydrogen task force. Within the task force, we have also established 4 subgroups on different aspects of the ramp-up, and we are happy about the joint work progress made and are looking forward to future results. I would also like to point to two funding programs. One is the PTX Hub, which supports capacity development to become a global player in line with international standards and norms, with a specific focus on sustainability criteria. This knowledge will be important for India on its way towards becoming a global export hub. And the second program is called H2 Up, and that one is supporting Indo-German company consortia with pre-feasibility studies and other support measures in their development of joint green hydrogen projects. We are convinced that with joint efforts we can achieve a global market ramp up within a decade, with economic development opportunities and a pathway to the decarbonization of the world's economy. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the further involvement of this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nicolin. And in fact, we were curious to see the next step of the policy framework being built around green hydrogen. Now it's my pleasure to announce Dr. Kurt Landsmann, one of the partners of today's organization. He is the CEO of ThyssenKrupp's Uhde business unit that actually encompasses the chemical engineering and the plant activities of the company. And I already mentioned at the very beginning, there are long-lasting traditions, relationships. My organization, the World Energy Council Germany, will celebrate its 100th birthday end of this year. I looked it up. ThyssenKrupp Uhde is even older, 103 years, I think, a little bit. I don't know how long are the ties from ThyssenKrupp Uhde to India, but I'm sure they're also very long and there's a good relationship. And now we want to see what ammonia can play into this game. Mr. Landsmann, the floor is yours.
Dear Excellency Ambassador Harish, dear Dr. Rolle, dear Dr. Nicolin, dear members of Parliament, dear ladies and gentlemen, virtually and here physically in the room. It's a great pleasure and an honor to also welcome you from my side as a co-host of today's event, and I'm very much looking forward to share with you some insights and share with you the role that we see for our business, ThyssenKrupp Uhde, in the future. Climate change is here. Climate change is real. And it's our joint obligation and task to fight this and reduce our carbon footprint. We are quite proud, ThyssenKrupp Uhde, of our heritage and our long history, and we are committed for the future because we own a couple of core technologies which are relevant and essential for climate change and for the transformation. Let me give you a quick overview of what we are, who we are, and what our ambition is. And to start with, the first point is, you see here the overview of ThyssenKrupp. Most important is, I will not talk about steel today. I talk about ThyssenKrupp Uhde. ThyssenKrupp is a big company, big conglomerate, 200 years old, almost 100,000 people, employees. We are in steel, maritimes, component systems, automotives, and yes, we are in chemical engineering. As such, it's a long tradition, and we play a quite unique role that is quite essential for the future. Because ThyssenKrupp represents what we talk about as a hydrogen triangle. We take 3 different distinct positions in the future hydrogen society. First part, on the upper side, we are a big demand holder. Our colleagues in steel will be shortly Europe's single biggest demander of hydrogen to green the steel production in Duisburg. Second part, we are also representing the supply side because our sister company, Nucera, is producing hydrogen from electrolyzers. They are right now leading with 1 gigawatt of manufacturing capacity, ramping up very soon to 5 gigawatts. So they are a leading position almost on a global scale. And thirdly, we also have the infrastructure. This is where Uhde comes into play. Because unluckily, and you know this, hydrogen production is not there where the demand is. As such, you have to bring the electrons, the green electrons and molecules from A to B. And there's where we come into play. We put out a vision to create a livable planet. Our strategy is to become a green champion, a clean champion and a green champion. And we do this by integrating demand, supply, and covering the whole value chain of hydrogen and ammonia. ThyssenKrupp Uhde. Yes, you're right. 102 years now. In the meantime, Friedrich Uhde founded the company back in 1925 in Herne, close to Dortmund. So since more than 100 years, we are in the area of chemical engineering. We do two distinct things. On the one hand, we provide technologies, and we own core technologies, ammonia, methanol, nitric acid, etc., which are relevant and essential for the transition. Second part, we do chemical plant engineering. So we work with customers, we design, we construct, we commission great plants. You see here the last plant, it's in Brunei. You see the size here, it's around about 50 soccer fields. And you see a fertilizer plant which can produce per day more than 2,000 tons of ammonia and urea, which means round about, I think, 800 million tons per year. So quite a nice number. You see it in Brunei, and you see that overall we represent the construction of the plant, but also all the logistics, the storage, and also the jetty, because ships are there in place to take the produced ammonia and urea, to ship it and export it. So we have the logistics in place, and we do everything around these logistics and around urea plants and ammonia plants. So if you talk about the two big segments that we have at Uhde, licensing and plant construction, I look into the third row here, and you see two of my colleagues. So today with me are my COO, Lee Schropson. He's in charge of all the construction activities, of all the operations. And my colleague, Tore Lohmann, he's my main man for ammonia and methanol. He's the key guy behind the technology. So if you want to have questions, they are here today to talk with you, discuss with you, and answer your questions. If you talk about Uhde, we are overall a company of around about 4,400 people. And you see here that our main locations are, guess what, in Germany and India. Germany with around about 1,200 people, and India even more. So we have two main locations, and therefore we are quite proud to have been a partner for a very long time with India over the last 60 years. India is our global hub for detailed engineering. Germany is the global hub for basic engineering. But overall, Uhde, a German company, German founded, but globally. Overall, we reach from Houston in the very west until Australia in the very east. Global footprint, and we have produced and we have built more than 2,000 plants in the last years, more than 130 fertilizer plants in the last 100 years. As such, a big leverage, and yes, we are committed to take our role in this global transition because we are a technology provider. We have a global footprint. We can act both locally and globally. What you see here are the two, let's say, main locations in India, Mumbai and Pune. The Mumbai office is called Uhde House, and you see the names there and the dates. We have been in India for more than 60 years. We started with first projects, with first site locations, and then had the first branch office in 1970, and the Indian company was formed in the end of the 70s. As of today, as I said, almost 1,300 employees in India, our main backbone. And also my CEO of India is here today, Rajesh Kamath. Any question, he's happy to also, let's say, answer and get in touch and dialogue with you. So far, Ude. This is a very high-level picture. We are in the middle of the transformation. I don't have to repeat things here. I think we have a huge demand of what I call green electrons. And these green electrons are relevant to decarbonize and restructure the whole industry, various sectors. Unluckily, it's most efficient, of course, to directly electrify and use the power. But unluckily, both time-wise and location-wise, supply-demand doesn't match. As such, we have to transform the green electrons into green molecules, or better to say, clean molecules. I'm a little bit colorblind, so to say. Not only green, in the long run green, but in the medium, also blue and other colors might come into play. And there we have, for these green molecules, key technologies, hydrogen, our colleagues from Nucera, but also ammonia and methanol. Methanol in the long run will be relevant for e-fuels, SAF, etc. Ammonia, we see it in the short run for the next 10 years, a huge demand. A huge demand as we have to build up the so-called hydrogen society. Ammonia, a quick one here, the basics of chemistry, NH3. 1 nitrogen, 3 hydrogen. So ammonia is, I think, a nice carrier for hydrogen molecules. We have an ammonia market. Ammonia is the second biggest traded chemical, base chemical today on Earth. Around about 180, maybe 200 million tons per year, which are traded and produced. The bulk of this goes into fertilizer, to produce the food for mankind. Also 10%, so around about 20 million tons, are today shipped around the world. Again, as an energy carrier, logistics are in place. You saw the picture earlier on. 20 million tons every year shipped across the oceans, but also down the Rhine River. Application is more or less always fertilizers, a bit also in cooling, but this, I think, is a nice chemical because it can carry hydrogen. And the luxury and really the benefit of ammonia is shown here, very simple. On top of having all logistics in place, the pure chemical speaks for ammonia as the natural carrier and the first choice to carry hydrogen. Easy point, in chemical words, you of course always try to liquefy the gas, otherwise it's not shippable. Hydrogen liquefies at minus 253 degrees Celsius. It's a big number for an amateur, even for an engineer. So this is difficult. And you see it there, almost 40% of energy has been used to just liquefy the hydrogen. Ammonia liquefies what I say at 2 times my refrigerator, minus 33 degrees Celsius. Far easier, cheaper, and has a higher density. Remember, 1 nitrogen, 3 hydrogen. So 2 ships of ammonia represent 3 ships of hydrogen. So far more efficient. The same number of let's say, volume accounts for far more hydrogen. As such, it's easier, it's cheaper and more efficient, and logistics are in place. And therefore, for us, and it's, I think in the medium, common, let's say, knowledge, ammonia is and will be the choice to carry hydrogen across the globes and to ship it. Short term, of course, it's always better and more efficient to either directly electrify things. Until 3,000 kilometers, pipelines might be more efficient. But beyond that, and yes, it will be a global game, beyond that, shipping is the way to go. As such, from our perspective, hydrogen very clearly the way to go. Last one from my side is the overall value chain, which is also important because you ship it, you produce it, you ship it, and then it comes to the harbors. You see on the left side here, we start on the very left side with the green electrons out of wind, solar, and hydrogen. And yes, always there, which is literally the lowest source. And the ambassador, the excellency, talked about, let's say, the cost reductions in wind and solar and the massive effects of scaling up. So we see production at 1 cent, maybe 2 cents, and there is the green electrons where they are going to be produced. You see then hydrogen being produced via electrolyzers, and we have, let's say, the nitrogen production via an ASU, air separation unit, which then gets into the ammonia production, which will be then the production that we can cover, ThyssenKrupp logo, ThyssenKrupp Ude logo. We have then the shipping, the loading, the unloading, and on the right you see the use of ammonia. It's twofold. The two upper areas are direct use of ammonia because it can be used directly in power plants. You replace gas, natural gas, with ammonia. This is happening already today. And MAN and Siemens, they are working on this, yeah, the gas turbine manufacturers. It's happening especially in Asia, Korea, South Korea, and in Japan. You can also use it for fueling ships. The jury is still out if it's now ammonia or methanol. But ammonia for sure is also a way to fuel ships. And the last point at the bottom is the cracking, so-called cracking. So you take ammonia and then again transform it back into hydrogen. And we here from Ude have a technology. We are very close to putting up a demo plant. Yeah, we are out of the lab phase. We put a demo plant in place in Germany to be announced shortly. And we want to then put in place a demo plant to crack the ammonia, to produce hydrogen again, and then you make it usable for green steel, for chemicals, or for fuel cells. As such, we have, in short notice, in short time, the complete chain covered. And if I see that in 2 years some big amounts of green or blue ammonia will be transported and will be imported into Europe, into Germany, we are in a position to then provide cracking to make it usable within Germany for industry, for chemical, etc. As such, all things are together from our perspective. We will cover the whole value chain, and we clearly want to play a key role in the future. And from that perspective, I stop here. So, Ude, we are committed. Our vision is clearly create a livable planet. Our strategy is to become a clean and green champion. And our obligation and commitment is to play a key role in this transformation. And we are very, very happy as the global player to have this position, go forward and contribute our part to the transformation, which is, again, obligation for all of us. Many thanks for your listening and looking forward to your discussions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Landsmann. In fact, we will come back, I think, to the role of ammonia in this game. I mean, we've talked about the role of hydrogen already, at least within the borders of a European pipeline grid. But what role will different derivatives play in the future when it comes to a trade of green molecules? This is one of the questions, and we've seen very, very interesting inputs. Not only how to use ammonia directly, but maybe also indirectly with the cracking technology that sounds quite promising. Now it's my pleasure to kick off a pitching session. Pitching means that I have the uncomfortable role to remember everyone that a pitch should last 5 minutes rather than a long speech, but it offers you the opportunity to listen to many different pitches, 7 pitches from companies, all involved in this business. And I won't say very much more than just namaste to all of the 7. And the start of this session goes to Tobias Winter. He is the director of the Indo-German Energy Forum, maybe to kick off what we will listen to. Mr. Winter, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rolle, His Excellency, Dr. Nicolin. Let me see if I can maybe remove this, or this is not a good idea. Yeah, thank you very much. So, yeah, good afternoon and namaskar. I was asked to give you a short introduction on what's going on in India. Any idea how many million tons per year India is already producing in grey hydrogen? Any idea? In million tons? 6 million tons, right. So 6 million tons, that places India already in the 3rd place globally in terms of grey hydrogen production, plus another 2 million tons of imports. It was mentioned, no? Mainly through fertilizer. So 2 million tons grey hydrogen imports via fertilizer and ammonia route. Actually, India is the largest importer of ammonia in the world. $200 billion India is actually spending to import fossil fuels. And this money could certainly also be spent on local production of green molecules. And I think this is maybe one reason why on 15th August 2021, the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has announced the green hydrogen mission of India with the aim of becoming the green hydrogen hub of the world and also its largest exporter. So the green hydrogen mission of India foresees 5 million tons production of green hydrogen till 2030 and another 5 million tons actually for export. And that led to, as the Honorable Ambassador Shri Paravathanini ji just said, to several bilateral agreements. And one was between government of Germany and the government of India. And this was then in 2022 when it had been decided to actually form the Indo-German Green Hydrogen Task Force and having the support office of the Indo-German Energy Forum to actually implement this task force. And it was really enlightening to see how many international and national organizations from India and Germany, also government organizations, research institutions, were actually interested and willing to support this Indo-German Green Hydrogen Task Force. Most important, the companies. So there is some German companies involved in the green hydrogen project development in India already. And I see some of them sitting here in the audience, so very much delighted. On the Indian side, and I see here the CEO of Avada being here with us, of Greenco. So these are the players. I see people from Renew Power, I see a friend from Reliance, I see people from Adani, somebody from Adani also here, maybe listening virtually. But yes, impressive the announcements. And maybe this is because India has excellent renewable energy resources. If you think of India, you say like, okay, maybe India doesn't have the best solar radiation in the world, and that's true. But what is true is that India has 365 days of, so to say, base load solar power. Yeah? So the worst day, you have actual generation data here in India. Somewhere in India, the sun is always shining. So you see on the worst day in India, yeah, you have around 50% of the generation of the best day. Compare this to 365 days in Germany or other countries. Amazing. But at the end, what it all is about is the levelized cost of electricity. And this is the data of Bloomberg, and a lot of international investors actually trust this data. And what you can see here is that India is able to harvest the sun at the lowest cost globally, at around $25 to $43 per megawatt hour. In wind, it is almost the same. India belongs to the champions globally, able to produce wind power at global competitive prices. And actually it was very nice for us to see the German the German consultancy firm Deutsche Windguard. They had done an analysis of which wind sites in India actually provide more power during the evening times and in the morning. And as you can see here, between 4 and midnight, 4 o'clock and midnight, this is the red area. This is where most of the wind power is being generated in India. And that is interesting to really increase the full load hours of the electrolyzers. So I think that's a natural interest then to see, okay, let's go to a country where the power globally is the cheapest. And I think that also led to the agreement we have heard. So congratulations once again between Uniper and Greenco for offtake of 250,000 tons of green ammonia. Then we hear about shipping contracts. Here, Indian shipyard, Cochin Shipyard got this contract to build hydrogen ships. We hear about Fraunhofer having signed an agreement with the Indian Ministry of Science. We hear about SFC, no? Not only about selling fuel cells in India, but also about manufacturing in India methanol fuel cells for the Indian market, I suppose. just an example for decentralized solutions. Certainly in NAPTA kickstarting first decentralized solutions. And then there's ThyssenKrupp Uhde. I think this is really amazing. ThyssenKrupp Uhde in 1962 actually commissioned the largest electrolyzer run by green power from a dam close by, 310,000 tons per day ammonia, unfortunately replaced by natural gas solution 30 years after because the price of electricity was so high. So one decided, okay, let's do it by gas. But yeah, hopefully we are getting back to a capacity of around 150 megawatt electrolyzer anytime soon. And with this I will end. Low electrolyzer capex, we have heard about other companies considering India for manufacturing. And if you see, Bloomberg is actually saying we don't need to talk about blue in India anymore, because in 2025, and that was pre-Ukraine war, India is foreseen to be competitive with green hydrogen competitive to blue. So there's no actually big discussion about blue ongoing. And then green hydrogen will be competitive with gray hydrogen at around 2027. So this is very great news, and I'm really looking forward to further discuss and get some more insights from the experts on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Winter. I think that was very helpful also for the analysis and the further conversation that we had. All these figures, biggest ammonia importer, India, third biggest producer. So we'll come back to that as it sets the ground. Now the second is Mark Grunewald. He's the Vice President, Business Development, Power Segment of MAN Energy Solutions, also dealing with everything that comes after, I think, hydrogen in the value chain.
Thank you. No. Thank you very much. It's excellent, Mr. Rolle. Ladies and gentlemen, great pleasure even for me to present and to show a little bit the interest of MAN. Some of you may know, a couple of years ago we were still named as MAN Diesel and Turbo, so we have a 200 years history in combustion engineers, and in India we have a longer history than the others. We are more than 120 years there, but not that successful as you. But anywhere we have a couple of hundred people there. We have even there our engineers and production facility. And India is a place where I think we have to make more business in the future than we did in the past, because as previous speakers already said, India is one of the countries that will be key for making this world more green than it is today. And we as MAN Energy Solutions, we are having this nice, let's say, not our logo, but this nice motto to say moving big things to zero. As we are working with industrial partners, we are looking for industrial solutions. So in general, it's not the small scale business we are looking for. It's the business to go. And we have the ambition to be a part, together with you as our partners, to reduce CO2 and to get decarbonization solutions in place. We are a member of the Volkswagen Group, but this group with more than 650,000 people does not really count for 15,000 people, so we are a small part in that group, and we're the only ones who are not dealing with four wheels. So we are really looking for industrial solutions, and we are coming, as you know, for most of you know us, that we are really producing big engines for the marine industry. Most of the two-stroke and four-stroke engines in this world are to somehow MAN engines, as well as we do have to look what can we do, how can we contribute to make the worldwide shipping more green. They're responsible for more than 3% of the CO2 emissions. So making our engines future fuel ready, trying to look for old solutions is important. And let's put it here, take that statement. Ammonia is one solution, we're working on that, but there is methanol, there is synthetic LNG or LNG and things like that. So I think we have to see this technology open, and we are developing in most of these areas. As well, we are coming from power we are a power producer. We have power plants mainly on island for solutions where you run your system independent, which is going to become more and more interesting. We do a lot of energy storage, which is more and more interesting when you talk about green energies. Green systems have to play in cooperation. And we have our big foot in the industries where we do with refineries, with CO2 compressors and things like that. Beside the fact that we are not that big, but anyway, we are a real international company. We are in 120 countries worldwide. This is mainly related to our marine business because you need to have your hubs and your services everywhere. But for you today, it's more interesting where we want to go in the future. And I only will show you when I say moving big things to zeros, what is our interest in the future? One thing is around our products. The heat pump is a very important thing. For industries, decarbonization could work that you go with green power out of wind, PV, whatever, and then using it, especially where you cannot deal directly with power, where you need steam or other products, and then heat pumps is going to be interesting, and we are looking for heat pumps in a bigger scale, not the small ones. This is where we're looking for. Second, which we are promoting very much, even here in Germany and in the world generally, we think we all have to see that the H2 world, the hydrogen world, is linked with the CO2 decision. And CO2 is not only something which we have to get out of the air, and it's even a product, it's even something that is valuable. So the question of CO2 sequestration and CO2 utilization, as well as how do we get direct air capturing done in the long term, is of extreme importance, and we are dealing on that. In that area, we have CO2 compressors, we can use that, we are partnering with people, and you know, we have this unavoidable CO2, for instance, the cement industry, they're even responsible for a couple of relevant percentages, and there we need to do some kind of CCS sequestration, and we are building there big solutions. My personal love is Power to X, because it all starts with, as we learned, the production of hydrogen. So we need power, like you said, we need renewable power. So my love goes for green power. But then making hydrogen out of it, and as Mr. Kortmann said, hydrogen is very difficult to transport. And when we're talking about export and import, we have to do something, and we have to change. So there is the idea of using then this hydrogen and then mixing it with CO2. Hopefully green one allows you to produce CH4, which would be very easy because you can use it and cool it down. You have the LNG, it's possible to use, as well as going for methanol or ammonia, as you have explained. This all are ways to think about how to transport and use this stuff, and the world has to look for this kind of solutions, and we will figure out, and my personal expectation is there will be place enough for all of us, and there will be place enough for all of these solutions, so it's not one or the other. I think it's something where we really have to think about, and therefore I'm a fan of, and I would love to tell this. Let's look for things that are, let's say, that could be done in a realistic time today, and I'm personally outing myself. If you do a CO2 sequestration behind a cement mill, and if you can produce green hydrogen, and you're mixing this H2 with the CO2, and you produce your own synthetic natural gas, even if there is 50% CO2 in, if you use it again for a ship or for something else, you save 50% of CO2 for the environment, and that could be realized tomorrow. Okay, I still have 1 minute, so I have to close. We are looking as well for the green propulsion as we have the engines today. As of today, our big ships, they can go for dual fuel. We have the big ones. As you see, they can run with methanol or with LNG or with oil or the HFO and this one, and we are developing, as you already said, the ammonia engines, and we are looking, as I said, technology wide open to be ready in the future for all these technologies. So I think there is only one picture that shows you MN is not involved in the value chain when it comes to the production of green power, but from that on, we have the electrolyzers, we have CO2 compressions, we can go for methanizations, we can go for compression, we can pump it and store it through the systems, and we are making our engine screen. So we try to be in the whole value chain of hydrogen, and hopefully we can find
good ideas and good projects together with you, and I would appreciate if this is a start for more business in India for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grunewald. Now, from PowerTX, we turn to Mr. Tapas Kapadia. He's the CEO of RWE Supply and Trading's Indian business. So we turned from technology company to the energy sector. And do look for Mr. Kapadia. Sorry. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
So, thanks a lot for the opportunity to speak about RWE, especially RWE Supply and Trading, which is a trading subdivision within RWE. And thanks for the chance to present in front of all the August gathering here. Thank you, Ambassador, as well. So, RWE is a German entity, 125 years old last week, energy company. Our whole life has been producing energy, supporting energy transition, energy transformation in Germany, and obviously also security of supply. RWE Supply and Trading is a trading division started basically with when energy industry deregulated in Germany, but now we are a global company present in almost all countries across the globe, looking at different commodity flows and commodity opportunities. And R West is also looking at ammonia value chain and building a full capability around green ammonia. As you can see, obviously we are a biggest renewable power generator in Europe, so we are upstream. We have a lot of vested interest in LNG as well, and a lot of knowledge there, which we plan to use for our midstream ammonia operations and optimization. We are looking at a terminal as well in Brunsbüttel near Hamburg for importing ammonia into Germany, which would be one of the first. And obviously our own customers, energy customers, industrial customers who would be target for our ammonia imports. So as we can see, we are trying to play the role of a trading company here, as well as providing solutions for the business. So we are, this is a couple of examples. RWE is currently looking at Namibia as well for offtake from there. RWE, Lotte, and Mitsubishi are also examining ammonia imports into Germany. So these are just a couple of examples. This is our short overview of the Brunsbüttel terminal. We are likely to have 300,000 tons of capacity by 2027, expanding to 1 million tons by 2030 to import ammonia into Germany. Obviously, the next step from there is to also build cracker infrastructure to then get hydrogen out of ammonia again. And obviously, the location is very appropriate, access to North Sea as well as other coastal sea routes. This will be in Brunsbüttel near Hamburg. So that's also something we are currently working on. Yeah. In terms of what I don't have here, also looking at specifically India, we are looking at export opportunities from India, and that's what my personal attention is, to look at ammonia import opportunities from India into Germany. So glad to be here, glad to be networking with you all, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapadia. Now the light is off, and hopefully that can be turned on. Okay. Now, next in the row is Mr. Mahesh Kohli. He's the founder and CEO of Greenco Group. And what Greenco Group means and does will be yours in 5 minutes.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for inviting us for this prestigious event. So we don't have this 100-year track record. I was one of the founders in 2005. But one thing I can assure you that it's a 15 to 18-year journey, only thinking about green. There's no flavors of green or no flavors of other colors. So everything we've done in the last 15 years is about how do we make energy reliable, domestic, how do we help energy security of India, but how do you make that the economics of anything to do with gray, and whether it's coal for power, whether it's gray for hydrogen, or whether it's gray for chemicals. So the 15 to 18-year journey has been all about anything we can deliver. It has to be not based on subsidies, no dependency on even new or breakthrough technologies. It's about how do we industrialize proven technologies and deliver the global pathway for the 2030 targets. Because we believe that if you're not achieving 2030 targets, by which the technologies have to be in place today, then obviously all our 2040 and 2050 targets will become 3 times or 4 times more harder, right? So just a quick summary, we've been involved in all the important value chains, and we only focus on value chains where we can have very good value to contribute. Like we don't participate in solar panel manufacturing because we believe it's a market by itself. But where we focused on the last 3 years has been, we are one of the largest energy company in India, over 7.3 gigawatts of operating assets. We're the largest hydro company in Asia outside China. But the last 3 years, our big focus has been about how do we make a clean energy, what I call as base load, firm, dispatchable, and flexible. Because we believe that if we don't make clean energy firm, dispatchable, schedulable, and flexible, the applications of that are very limited, right? It can be a small part of a large energy system, but then you're depending on many other factors too. So we believe that renewables is not carbon-free, because renewables only enables more dependency on carbon, because more solar you put to the system, you need some kind of carbon source to support that, right? More wind you put to the system, you need carbon source to support that. So our endeavor has been in the last 3 to 4 years, how do you make renewables carbon-free? Because we believe renewables is green, that's great, but it's actually low quality energy because it does not support any form of demand to run an industry, to run a steel plant, or to run an ammonia plant, right? So that's a big focus for us. We've solved that through large energy storage network we're creating. We are building 100 gigawatt hours of energy storage in India. We're investing $5 billion, and we'll have our first of our 10 gigawatt hours of the 100 gigawatt hours ready by December to January this year. It will be great to invite any of the esteemed guests here, if you're visiting India, to visit our large storage project. But the key here is that we are making this energy storage at a point where, what we call as energy it's been a holy grail for the sector, right? So energy is understood, it's becoming cheaper, but is it not reliable, right? So what we've done is, through our approach to this concept of closed loop pumped hydro, we've created this concept of closed loop pumped hydro at an economics where energy plus storage cheaper than coal today in India. So we can now deliver to the market in India. For example, ArcelorMittal is potentially going to run their steel plant, first time ever globally, on a hour-by-hour, 24/7 continuous renewable power in the next 12 months. And the same thing we worked with Hindalco. Hindalco will run their smelter first time globally on a 24/7 renewables, right? So that's where we are preparing India for the carbon border tax of Europe, actually. And but the key is at what cost? That's why we believe that we can deliver carbon-free energy in India. As I said, it is not renewables, it's carbon-free, cheaper than coal. And that's where the Honorable Ambassador was explaining that India will need another 400 to 500 gigawatts of primary new energy. And that new energy will be largely carbon-free, and so that our future of energy whether it's for making new steel plants or making new chemicals and molecules. Indian energy market is third largest in the world, and the second largest in terms of steel making. We'll need to expand every part of our Indian economy, and the big part of Indian economy now will be able to move to carbon-free instead of focusing on decarbonization, right? That's the big point. And I think another important point on the whole hydrogen aspect, that's something which we've been focused the last, 2 to 3 years is, what is the biggest contributor to the cost of hydrogen? We said the biggest contribution issue is the cost of hydrogen storage and the cost of solving intermittency. So by making now renewables continuous through the storage model, we've been able to bring in the ideas of how do we run the electrolyzers at 90%, 95% utilization rate through the alkaline partnership we created with John Cockerell of Belgium. And we could avoid the hydrogen storage completely in running the continuous hydrogen and ammonia processes, right? So this architecture, which we have been able to show, that's where we believe in India, we are already doing hydrogen below $3 with no subsidies, right? So when we hear about the IRA bill talking about $3 subsidy and all the big corporates running for that, and we're saying, come to India, you can get $3 for no subsidy, right? And that creates so many derivatives from that. So when we make ammonia, we believe we can have the lowest cost ammonia architecture in the world with no subsidies. Methanol, no subsidies, right? So I think that's a big transition we can able to make. That in India, as our Mr. Ambassador mentioned, that has the single largest grid in the world. So the combination of the strength of Indian grid, the combination of the massive natural resources India has, and the scale of hydrogen, the scale of energy storage India has, we are able to make this lowest cost architecture globally. So these are important aspects I talked about. The diverse resource base, the largest grid. The market domestic ecosystem is so large for all manufacturing and other services. And we also have this partnership. Just to show you this, our ability to produce carbon-free power 24/7, is probably lowest in the world. I don't know if any other country can make less than $50 24/7 continuous carbon-free power, right? And so finally, we have this partnership with an European partner, John Cockerell. So we're jointly manufacturing electrolyzers in India. So we have broken ground on our first 2 gigawatt plant and potentially have 4 gigawatts by 2024, by 25. So some of these important partnerships, of course, largely European support. Our pump storage is actually supported by Andritz from Austria. Our electrolyzer is supported by our Belgium technology supplier. So we're able to bring great technologies from Europe, work with the resource base and the strong grids in India. And as I said, the objective is, can we enable, just as we enabled carbon-free power cheaper than coal, can we enable green hydrogen, green ammonia cheaper than the price at which India is importing ammonia and cheaper than grey hydrogen, and we believe we are already there. And that's an important partnership we signed with Uniper to deliver first of those by 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Young company, but huge investment already, and an important role in integrating the volatile energies in the energy system. Thank you very much. Now, next speaker is Shirley Oliveira. And Ms. Oliveira is the Global Vice President, Hydrogen and CCS Regulatory Affairs, two topics that are closely linked. And in Germany, we are also waiting for the CCS strategy of the German government. So it's two very interesting political topics as well. Please, Ms. Oliveira.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. And it's fantastic to be here, Your Highness, Your Excellency, Dr. Rolle, Dr. Nicoletti, and all the audience, and business and other partners. I think I'll talk a little bit about BP. Clearly, we're not a German or an Indian company, but we have a very long history in both countries. One thing I had to look up because I saw everybody quoting, how many years the companies existed. So I knew BP was over 100 years, but I just looked up and it's 114 years that we exist. And we were born already as an international company, so we started in the Middle East, as you know. So why is this important for us, hydrogen CCS? Well, we see very much ourselves as a global provider of energy. And we play in all of different parts of the energy supply chain at the moment, from production to transportation to consuming. We're also big off-takers, and also we have a massive trading arm. So really important for us to transition into this new world of green energy. And as part of that, our growth engines, we have a growth engine strategy. And that includes EV charging, includes bio, includes offshore wind, solar, and hydrogen and CCS. And in particular, in Germany, we have had a long presence. We have, Aral here. We have 2 refineries. We have pipelines. We are very, very present in Germany. And also in India, we have a strong partnership with Reliance Energy. We have got, distribution. We have Castrol. It's a huge brand. So for us, it's very logical to think, what is the next step for us as a company in this world where we all need to reach net zero and we need to be able to support those objectives? So one of the big pillars, as I said, it's hydrogen. And here is a summary of our strategy. So we are already in action. We have got more than 10, hydrogen projects that we're talking about. We tend to be technology neutral because our view is that what is important is to decarbonize at the fastest pace and to be able to use the technology or the type of energy that is most appropriate to the resources in that particular location. So we think where we have good renewable conditions, then absolutely green hydrogen, it's a no-brainer. If we think we have advantage gas and storage, then we will look for blue hydrogen projects. So it's very much what is there, what is more advantage for that location. In terms of the strategy, you can see here, so we want to produce about 0.5 to 0.7 MTPA of hydrogen, and this includes blue and green by 2030, and it's one of the most important growth transition engines. So how do we see the strategy playing up? Well, we think that hydrogen, is going to start slowly, but but will ramp up to 2030s, mid-2030s, and then it will ramp up and will be a global, start becoming more of a global convenience. We are a commodity. We are in a very particular position in that we can both produce, transport, and also be an off-taker, which really helps our projects. And I think that's a huge advantage, because I know many people are looking for off-takers at the moment. So we are in the position that we can be an off-taker ourselves. So what are our projects? Let's stop the mystery and look at the world map. You can see we have got quite a widespread range of projects across the globe, because diversity of supply, diversity of sources is very important. So we want to make sure that we have projects in the most advantaged locations and that we have projects in a range of positions. So that puts us in a really good position when we're thinking about vectors. We can think about our projects to look at various types of hydrogen derivatives and vectors, depending on the market requests and conditions for that specific geography. It gives us a flexibility and optionality to have this type of portfolio. So how do we see it? Well, we see it in 3 ways, our strategy. The first one is really about decarbonizing our own operations. We are one of the biggest producers, but also users of grey hydrogen. And here in Germany, specifically in our refineries, in Lingen, Gelsenkirchen, we use hydrogen. Rotterdam, also in Europe, it's a big refinery, uses hydrogen. So we need to decarbonize our own operations. And in Spain, we also have a refinery, and in the US in Whiting. So first step is look at your own house and try to decarbonize it. So that's the first set of projects we have. Then we are thinking about where are those industrial hubs, where a range of industries from chemicals, fertilizers, cement, even transportation sectors, they need to decarbonize. They also need access to this low carbon hydrogen. These are our second set of projects where we look at industrial hubs and we try to set up a project to decarbonize those hubs, where we provide those molecules that help to decarbonize. So an example is H2T site in the UK, High Green in the UK. These are projects where we don't have an existing footprint. It's not somewhere where we have operations or we are an off-taker, but we have been able to progress projects there because there's an industrial base that also needs to decarbonize. And then our third set of projects are what we call the major export hubs. So these are projects we're talking about gigawatt scales. One of the biggest one is AREH in Australia, the Australian Renewable Energy Hub. And we are looking at how do we support those countries' ambitions to diversify supply, diversify their energy supply, and also to decarbonize with large-scale, supply. These projects are in Australia. We have some in Australia. We have projects in Mauritania. We're looking at Egypt. We have also projects in UAE. These are all very large-scale projects, where we're trying to think, how do we meet this need for a long term? And this is really important for us because we think this is a market that is going to develop at pace, but at the same time, it's not going to be all at the same time. So it's important to have a structure where we say, start where you have your offtake, then move to industries also that need to decarbonize, and then think about it from a global perspective. And we want to play across the whole supply chain. So that's what this portfolio gives us. Optionality, diversification, and the ability to play to the strengths of the different locations and supply our customers depending on what are their requirements. So I will now zone in one particular project because we are in Germany. So this is a project that is very dear to us. And I know we've heard already about 2 other ammonia cracker terminals. So BP is also proposing one. We're in the process of developing our project in Wilhelmshaven. And I think it's really good to see various projects because Germany, as we heard, needs to import 60 to 70% of their energy. So it is really of hydrogen. So it's important to have diversity. And this is where we're coming in. We're coming in with this idea that we're here to help support the government strategy to have a multitude of options and supply. So we have the project. I won't go through the statistics. You can read them. I think really important is the fact we have signed letters of intent with the government of Australia and Mauritania to help supply this project. Again, diversification for Germany. But it's an infrastructure that is open access, so it's open to third parties. We have got land. We are doing feasibility studies. We have got a link with the NWO, Hazuni and Thyssenkas pipeline. So we have got already an export route for the ammonia that we intend to import, import and then crack and then export. So we have got. We think a really good ecosystem in which we can look at production in a diversified range. We have the engineering capability. We are used to these large-scale projects. So we think that this is a really good project to help Germany in its strategy to secure their sources of energy. And then we, BP, very much want to play there. It's important for us to continue. This is a country where we've had a very strong relationship over many years, and we want to continue to supply energy, but now low carbon, to help the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I was just stuck, as there's some parallels also to the Indian strategy, I found out, as you also start by replacing the gray hydrogen and gray ammonia in the company yourself before you then envisage new options and new use cases, very much like the green hydrogen mission that India just initiated earlier this year. And now we turn to Mr. Vinay Mittal. Mr. Mittal is the chairman of Avada Group, and he was also rewarded as Solar Man of the Year in the past. So please a warm applause for Mr. Mittal.
Namaskar. Very warm welcome to all of you. His Excellency, and I see many friends here who I have met in the past 2-3 years advocating hydrogen policies at various forums in EU. So thank you for inviting me. Avada story is a story of Indo-German partnership. We started our solar journey with the help of a company called Conergy in Leipzig here. And they had helped us set up our 15 megawatt solar project in India, which was India's first few projects in the country, which was done in Gujarat with the help of Conergy. And I'm happy to note that Acme and us were the two players in those days when everyone used to criticize us that only wind and hydro is the way. What kind of crazy decision I'm taking of setting up a large solar project. I think world has proven them wrong. So not Germany only. I did the first EPC contract award to a German company. We got funded by DEG. And what DEG board says to me that I am the only company where they have invested twice. So they came and invested with us in 2013 and then again back in 2017, and we gave them a very successful exit in 2020. So they have invested twice, and KfW has been a big supporter from second project onwards. They have funded several of our projects through cheaper financing. So that's why I say that our journey is journey of Indo-German friendship and Indo-German partnership. Our SCADA and entire O&M is run on German technology and German software through a startup company whose 50% plus business is based on work we provide. So friends, Avada's business is an integrated business model. Like our Honorable Ambassador pointed out, supply chain challenges. We can deliver green ammonia, green hydrogen if we are getting all the raw materials. And when I say raw materials is in the form of solar machine, wind machine, pumped hydro machine, there are huge supply side challenges. And many of you who are in the business must know that there was one country where majority of our sourcing used to come from denied to supply, and the cost of shipping went from $800 to $8,000 for 18 months. To avoid such casualties in the future, Avada has got Indian government grants and have raised $1.3 billion funding to transition itself from a pure play IPP business to a green fuel company. And my friend from Greenco, Mahesh, brought up a very interesting issue that how green is solar itself. So I'm very happy to share with all of you very proudly that we would be the first company in the world from next year where every electron which goes into manufacturing of solar panel would be 100% green. So that's, my friend, is the ability of India, not only to talk about green, it's part of our inherent culture as a nation. And our Honorable Prime Minister keeps talking about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is the whole concept of the whole world is one family. You can restrict people movement through visa, but air finds the place to travel without visa. And if India continues to pollute, the rest of the world will be impacted. So follow up on his vision. Avada is looking at setting up 4 million tons of green ammonia, green hydrogen, and a very small SAF project which we are piloting currently. As my friends from Uday told me, they saw our bids a few weeks back in Financial Times. So I would encourage all of you to participate in our 500,000 green ammonia tender, which we want to commission by 2026. We are looking for the EPC partner and technology partner both. We would be happy to start our ammonia business also with the German partnership, because in our solar panel manufacturing, we have partnered with ISC Constance. They are our technical partner as well as the patent provider for TOPCon and type technology. So It's not disputed. It's not disputed in Europe. It's not disputed in US, and it's a controversy-free technology transfer without any violation of IP. And our uniqueness lies in that we do the entire value chain ourselves, right from developing the project to EPCs for those projects, owning and operating them. And we are fortunate that we are the only company in the world which has completed a single project of 1250 megawatt, which is operational and running at a single location. We operate our own internal grid, and power gets evacuated at 400 kV with the national grid. And there is a documentary on YouTube and many channels called promoted by National Geography, which talks about this project. And I'm happy and very proud to share for our green ammonia project and for other customers. We are in the process of constructing another 3,000 megawatt single location project. So friends, when you heard from BP and few other players, they are looking at in Australia, say 5,000 megawatt of electrolyzer. The quantum of solar, wind and hydro project which you will need will be almost double or triple size of Berlin. And when you have to align so many solar panels, you will probably need 80,000 people for a year consecutively. And those people should have an expertise on alignment, because without robotics, you can't clean and you can't get output. So friends, India not is only house for Uday's technical division where they have their engineering ability. Actually, if you look at Halda Topsoe, which is another ammonia, methanol technology provider, or an electrolyzer, KBR, you look at Kasala, all the four players, their talent pool or intellectual capital largely resides in India. And we are fortunate that so many top companies are trusting India as their partner. And so there is a great opportunity to actually do this business responsibly. Avada currently meets 13 SDG goal directly by our own intervention through our philanthropic arms and business practice. And we are actually funded by both molecule company as well as renewable company. So we have raised $1.3 billion recently to do 1.5 million ton of green ammonia and green methanol project. We have got FID as well as in principle loan sanction for our 500,000 ton of green ammonia. And we work with a lot of global players, including Linde. We are their provider of energy in India, a lot of data center. And actually our strength lies in that for us, it's not a business, it's a value system. Our name Avada comes from Ayurveda, which is A, and Vada is promise. So our family office chose this name so that every action we take for enhancing the human life, enhancing the tree's life, and not be in any business which is not sustainable. And that's not only our name, that's our complete journey. And I tell my friends that in Indian culture, we are fortunate that we are using abundance of sun god, wind god, and water we treat as mother. We call Ganga Ma, which means mother, and you are always respectful to your mom. And so our saying to our customer as well as to our employees that we are using the abundance of divine sources and we are converting them into your livelihood as well as our livelihood. So your purpose of life becomes more meaningful if you work and partner with Avada. And that's why, friends, you should look at partnering with us, not only because we are based in a spiritual country like India, but our purpose is much higher, and we think God has been kind to us, and we are fortunate enough to be chosen to do things responsibly and align ourselves with the Mother Earth's goal of protecting the nature. If we can't be good to the nature, we can't be bad either. And, and that's the rule for all of us. And fortunately, all of us are in this room. That means we are already aligned to protect Mother Earth. And our cooperation with Germany can be in area of green hydrogen and ammonia. And there are certain policy constraints which our Honorable Ambassador already highlighted, and we have been regularly communicating with the government here. And India's massive advantage lies that our Thar Desert alone can meet your overall requirement of 20 million tons of import. And the biggest thing which German company and European company should look at, that under Article 6, India is the only country which has allowed that if you buy green ammonia, green hydrogen, and green methanol from India, you can take the benefit of carbon emission and it can be counted towards your goal. Our government notified it 6 weeks back, that legislative change, and that will be an advantageous for the European country, and it also fulfills the commitment which European Union promised in COPs 15 to COPs 26. So India is the right place, not only because of our culture, but because we have all the right resources from water, land, solar and wind, manpower, and amazing grid which can take the fluctuality of intermittent nature of this energy. And these are some challenges in definition from the EU, which our ambassador sir is following up with the government. And there is a huge area of cooperation in the area of financing. If insurance company in the Germany are not asked to make higher provision because we are a triple B minus company, minus country, then the cost of funding for such projects will come down. And that will further enhance ability of India to provide you the cheapest source of green ammonia, green hydrogen, and further strengthen Indo-German partnership. So thank you, friends. We have several opportunity from technology, finance, and creating the marketplace, and we are at the cusp. Like what Germany and Europe did in solar, you are going to do the same in ammonia, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mittal. Avada, Ayurveda for the energy transition. Sounds like a very interesting concept. Let's see how we can adopt this. Now, last in the row is Mr. Ashwani Dudeya. Mr. Dudeya is director of the green hydrogen and ammonia business at ACME Group and has a long track record in the oil and gas industry with Shell, with ADNOC. So we are curious what ACME does in this game before we all round it up with the discussion. Please.
Thank you very much. And good evening, everyone. 5 minutes to pitch the company is a big challenge, which I will try to meet. But in addition, I would also like to pitch the industry, because we have all talked about a huge opportunity. There is a lot of challenge also which we need to overcome to realize some of the targets and numbers which we talk about. So let me just quickly start with the quick introduction about our company. As most of the renewable companies, we are also very young, only 2 decades old company. We started back in 2003 by our founder chairman, who has no family background of business. He was an employee here in Germany. He decided to develop a patented product for telecom sector in power, a power interface unit. And that was one of the first disruptions which the company carried out and helped bring down the cost of mobile telephony in India from 20 cents to 7 cents. A large part of the power telecom cost is actually coming from telecom towers. And this power interface unit was designed to reduce the overall energy consumption in these telecom towers. Then we entered in the solar business in 2012, and we are still one of the cheapest power producer in India, as Vineet mentioned. Not many people believed at that point of time. that we will be successful, but 2.44 rupees per kilowatt hour, which is roughly 3 cents per kilowatt hour, is what we achieved, and the plant is still running successfully for the last 5 years. Last but the most important one for this forum is really the green ammonia project, which we built back in 2021. It's a very small pilot plant, 5 tons per day in a western state of India, and perhaps the world's first fully integrated plant where starting from solar to electrolyzer and ammonia loop is all situated in one single location. Technology permitting, I will try to play a small video of our Bikaner facility.
Welcome to the world's first green hydrogen and green ammonia plant. The plant is located in Bikaner in Rajasthan, India. Here, renewable power generated from solar PV plants is used to produce green hydrogen. The nitrogen is captured from atmosphere. Green hydrogen is produced by splitting purified water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen without using fossil fuels, using an electrolyzer. This technique is very clean and produces more than 99.999% pure hydrogen gas. The air available in the atmosphere is pressurized through the air compressor and being buffered by the filter and air dryer. This process produces 99.5% nitrogen. The green hydrogen and nitrogen are mixed and preheated up to 200 degrees Celsius. The product stream then enters into ammonia synthesis converter. Then it's further heated to 360 degrees Celsius. The final product is ammonia. The produced liquid green ammonia is stored in the pressurized vessel, which can be transported to anywhere in the world. By using world-class technology, the process is 100% emissionless. Acme, leading through innovation.
So the unique thing about this project really is that it was built when there was not a lot of conversation about green hydrogen and green ammonia in the world. We were one of the first ones to spot this as the future opportunity and built something which is working still today on a non-commercial basis. We do load 1 truck every 10 to 15 days. It's a small facility, as I mentioned, but has given us a lot of learning to develop something much bigger. But I also need to mention that this facility has been visited by about 35 different delegations, of which 10 delegations have been sponsored by the Ministry of Power from various countries. So we, back about 1.5 years ago, went to various places in the world to see where we have the best solar potential and can put up a most competitive ammonia facility. And one of the places where we shortlisted and are now developing what potentially is going to be the world's first integrated green ammonia plant is in Oman. We have been allocated 92 square kilometers of contiguous piece of land, which is very important to develop a facility like this. We also have some unique attributes to the whole plant. Our plant was certified by TUV Rhineland as being fully compliant with the RED II norms. We have some construction activities which have already started at the plant for our phase 1, and the other unique part of our project is that we signed one of the first non-related party transaction with a Norwegian company named Yara for our first phase of production from Oman. I'll just show you some pictures of our Oman facilities. And just because we started off in Oman doesn't mean that we don't have a commitment in India. We, of course, are looking to market our output from Oman in Germany. We have already signed up, as I mentioned, a European buyer. And hopefully we will have some of the buyers in future in Germany, including the H2 Global tender. But we are also developing. We are not stopping there. We have an aspiration to be amongst the top 3 renewable fuel companies in the world, with a target of about 10 million tons of ammonia or equivalent hydrogen by 2030. So our other 2 projects in India are in Tamil Nadu and Odisha, and they are progressing quite well. We have been awarded the government contracts, and we have now started the basic engineering and other activities which are required to develop these projects. And then we have a project in Egypt for which, again, we have started some basic activities. And the other one which we are which we are working on very aggressively, is a project in US, which again, our initial target is to market the volumes which will be manufactured in US to the buyers in US, not for the export purpose. And as I mentioned, I would end my presentation by highlighting some of the key challenges. Awada has very appropriately put some of the challenges of technology, about the financing aspect. Just to give some feel, that every 100 basis points of project of interest cost increase results in more than, and this is just an estimate, it will vary from one project to another, will make an impact of nearly $50 per ton of ammonia price, which is huge. And in that sense, if German government and some of the banks in Germany are able to bring in a cheaper finance options for some of the projects in India, that is going to be a big support. But I also want to talk about two more things. One is the commercial challenge, and that's very important. We have now gone through one cycle of negotiating a long-term contract of 18 years plus with a European buyer. And we realized that it is so difficult. First and foremost, there have not been many contracts in the world which have been signed like this. Actually, none, because most of the gray ammonia business which happens today are all annual basis. There are no long-term contracts which are signed. And without long-term contracts, there is no funding available. And these very high capex projects do need project financing at an attractive rate to be feasible. And last but not the least, I want to talk about the demand and supply. We are all talking about, the entire conversation in this room has been focused on supply and very little conversation on demand. I was very pleased to see the presentation from Man, which talks about developing equipment which can burn ammonia directly rather than converting it back to hydrogen and losing some energy. And as rightly pointed out by him, some of the Japanese companies have already developed products which can consume ammonia directly. And that's an area where Germany can play a very, very important role, not just on the power generation and the marine side, but also looking at other industrial applications like steel and heating applications in other industries. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And in fact, these were the pitches that we wanted to produce. I know there was a lot of input in a short amount of time, but I think it was quite enriching also for the discussion that we might have now. You see the curtain is closing, but the theater play is not over yet. The best is still to come, so please stay with us for a minute. As we now try to connect the dots that have been played out by the ambassador, by all the speakers. And we want to do this with a panel of highly experienced experts that I'd like to introduce to you. So we will have discussion on the panel, but you, all of you that have been so patient to stay here, have the chance to ask questions as well. So please think already of your questions while we were starting in a minute. So we can make this really an interactive session, at least to some extent. Now, who is on our panel? First of all, I'm very glad that Mr. Mansmann could join us today. Mr. Mansmann is member of the parliament, and he is He's the Innovation Commissioner for Green Hydrogen in charge of, or on behalf of the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, and by that standing a bit for the political side of our panel. Next to her will be Anita Demuth. Ms. Demuth is the Deputy Director of the PTX Lab in Lausitz. And you also bring quite some experience, I think, international experience from your GIZ activities in former times. So this will be, I think, most interesting. As I forgot this to mention, maybe unusual for politicians also have two backgrounds, as a physicist and as a, physicist and philosophy. That was the second profession. That is quite unusual, I think, to some extent, in German parliament at least. Now, third in the row is Professor Jürgen Petersheim. Yeah, also joining me in applause. Professor Petersheim is the Senior Manager for Sustainable Services at PwC, the consulting company, I think globally well known, but also adjunct professor, as in his title. So a long time, I think, already teaching and doing research in this field of power to X, of e-fuels, and everything that is around the molecule side, so to speak. And last but not least, we are happy to have Mahesh Kohli on the stage again. He's been presenting already, the founder and CEO of Grenco Group. And during my speech, I hope that now there will be a few seats for all of us. At least we will have a look at it in order to in fact start the discussion on the panel. Please join me. Können wir schon rein? Ah, perfekt. Ja, bitte. Now, great. Coming back to the initial words of the ambassador, I think, so to the Indian strategy, the green hydrogen strategy of beginning of this year. In this strategy, I think several steps were quite interesting. And one of this was to start not only with hydrogen, but also think of the role of the derivatives at the very beginning. And in particular, we've seen the big role ammonia plays in India, biggest importer globally, third biggest producer of ammonia. So gray ammonia already plays a significant role, and replacing the gray ammonia by green will be a huge task for the first years to start with, same with hydrogen. So the question maybe to the lady in our round, Mrs. Demuth, at the beginning, what role might ammonia play in the future beyond the traditional sectors, fertilizer, refineries, that we want to start off, talking about ammonia as an energy carrier? Is that a trend that you see in other parts of the world as well?
Yes, thank you first of all for the invitation, and I congratulate all the industry leaders for your amazing projects, and also the political leaders for your political leadership. I think we really need a systemic leadership to solve the climate crisis, and my role comes more into being intermediate between the political sphere, science, and industries, and also the usage sectors. So we are working on power to X as a means to actually achieve to mitigate climate change, and we think that we have to prioritize the power to X for certain sectors. So we are working on aviation, shipping, and the chemical industry. And well, I have dived a bit more into the question if green ammonia is a fuel for the shipping industry. So in the shipping industry, there is the industry is not really clear on which are the fuels of the future. There's a big basket of possible fuels. Some are more carbon intense than others, and I think green ammonia has a big chance to win the game, but there's one big competitor that is e-methanol. It seems that, at least from the shipping industry perspective, it seems to be different from what I heard today from the ammonia producers, is that handling is still an issue, and I think it's maybe not on the specific ships that are transport the ammonia for the chemical industry, for the fertilizer industry, but really this idea of having ammonia as a fuel on each ship, on each cargo vessel, this might be more challenging. And there's a new EU regulation that was just decided that also is supporting this idea of having really green green hydrogen-based fuels as carriers of the future.
Yeah, in fact, ammonia is toxic, but there's a long tradition, of course, of making use of ammonia globally. There are existing markets. And what we've heard is that there are different ways to make use of it, as in the sectors you mentioned, aviation, maritime sector, chemical industry. But maybe, and that was, I think, one of the remarks of Mr. Landsmann, also as an energy carrier, that might be reconverted then into hydrogen. A new technology, at least one that is in an earlier stage, demonstration phase now, but that could make ammonia also globally quite interesting and give it an additional role for the future. So Mr. Landsmann, talking with the innovation expert of German Parliament on this and also for the Ministry of Research and Development, is that something you think is a technology that is worth being supported? Is that already quite a ripe one where we are close to market? What's the Ministry's, what's the Parliament's view on that?
Yes, of course, I think ammonia cracking is interesting, especially for Germany, because we have the problem, of course, we don't know exactly, or we don't know, not at all, how the future market will look like. But I'm quite convinced that we will have a German hydrogen net. But the transport to Germany, this is the main problem. And transporting pure hydrogen over far distances is really a big problem. And ammonia is a good option, is a very near option from the state of the art of the moment. And then the cracking is, of course, you lose a lot of energy by producing ammonia and then cracking it again. But finally, I'm quite convinced, meanwhile, at least for a time in the future, this could be an option. And because of that, it's developed and we support that. And there are crackers planned in Germany, I think in Brunsbüttel in Hamburg, and also in other places in the Netherlands or in Belgium, where a lot of energy is delivered to Germany right now. Fossils in future will be green energy, and those big harbors in Rotterdam, Antwerp, are also developing this cracking option.
Absolutely, and that sounds as if you think of it also in a strategy dimension of the next policy framework. But so the question is, if ammonia arrives in harbors in Germany, do we need additional infrastructure? To what extent will ammonia play in? I mean, there will be roles for different derivatives, for different fuels, as they are today, but some of these roles might change. And the open question is, do we need another infrastructure there for ammonia, or is that, with the existing infrastructure for the next years to come, already quite well dealt with the ships and trains and the way it is now going?
Yes, of course, we will need ammonia maybe as a transport medium for hydrogen. Then we will have crackers right at the place where the energy enters the country. This means at the ports. But of course, ammonia is needed as ammonia. Germany is a big ammonia producer right now in the moment. But after the energy crisis, we lost parts of it already. You can see this is the change of the industry and economics, right? You can look at it, how it changes. But we will need it for different things. So there will also be the necessity to transport ammonia all over Germany, for example, to Ludwigshafen, where in the moment it's produced, but it's produced with gas. So it's dirty, it's gray ammonia, and it's a carbon-intensive process. And in the future, I hope that green ammonia will be competitive, and I'm quite convinced it will. Also, in case of far-distance transports, and then we need two different transport options inside the country for hydrogen and for ammonia.
That's at least one of the trends that we see globally when it comes to far-distance transport of molecules, that ammonia might be an interesting option in countries like Australia, maybe also to India. And India, in fact, wants to or has the aspiration to become the global hydrogen hub, so to speak. At least that was a clear part of this strategy. How do you look as an entrepreneur on this aspiration? Is that from the usage side as well something that can be easily achieved? What are the steps, and how can Germany actually, and with all the companies that you've presented today, how can that contribute to achieve this role?
I think very clearly India is in a very unique advantage position right now because India itself is a large consumer, as our ambassador was mentioning, that it imports 3 million tons of ammonia. We import $25 billion worth of LNG to make grey hydrogen. So we have so much technologies and large-scale ecosystem developing in India with the support of government, and also, you see, we're already 3-4 of our colleagues already here. So I think what's really happening for India is that, unlike Middle East or Australia, which is largely export-driven, India is already building a very large domestic matured infrastructure for displacing grey hydrogen and displacing grey ammonia within the country. And that is also giving capabilities and the scale advantage to achieve globally competitive green export opportunities. And we're all talking about near term, right? We're talking about 25, 26, and not talking about 2030. So, like for example, there are already 4 ports in India which import ammonia, and those 4 ports are going to help export ammonia as well. So it's a win-win situation. Anything we do, from the electrons to grids to hydrogen to ammonia, it's a shared infrastructure used both for domestic needs and also for export. And that way, the risk of that ecosystem we're creating is fairly kind of supporting. Is the foundation for that is India itself, and then the global is another extra opportunity.
India is just a huge market potentially with all the demands from different industries and from growing industries, really a fast-growing economy. Professor Petersheim, if you look on this role and the aspiration that is mentioned in this strategy, what are the key advantages in this game of many places around the world that want to play a role as a hub that India could play out, and what might be the barriers that we still have to work on?
Yeah, well, good questions. I mean, what are the potentials, right? What are the benefits? I mean, it was mentioned, the renewable energy price is very low, fairly stable, huge grid, so competitive power production globally. So I think this brings the benefit of, firstly, I think, becoming energy independent, so there's a resiliency aspect. I mean, I think you mentioned earlier, there's billions of dollars of buying fossil fuels at the moment, so that's one aspect. I think the second is really decarbonizing their own energy grid, second. We heard a lot about energy export, so I think, yes, it's going to be ammonia in the short term, I'm pretty sure, because we can transport it, we have the infrastructure. In the longer term, we'll see. I mean, we see first liquid hydrogen carriers, or one actually, not multiple, between Australia and Japan. So this is technology being tested. Nonetheless, the challenge mentioned earlier of, let's say, minus 253 degrees versus minus 33, significant, right? But long term, we'll see. Short term, certainly ammonia. I think a fourth aspect that has not been mentioned yet is really looking at decarbonizing products. So not only looking at the energy export, but looking at, hey, we can use our renewable electricity, turn it into hydrogen, produce low carbon steel, and then sell low carbon components. To all the products, we attach a product carbon footprint, and then thinking about CBAM for Europe, but also other parts of the world, you could, as a significant exporter, sell energy and sell low carbon products. And I think that's the most relevant aspect, because that's where you get the biggest part of the value chain, right? I remember actually when I was living in Australia, we did build a biomass power plant, and Thyssen, India developed it actually, or supplied it. And there was no carbon footprint attached to this. But I think in today's times, if you can offer a product at a competitive price and say, this is a premium for cutting the embedded carbon emissions in half, there's a market for it, that's for sure.
And we're just about to build these framework conditions, talking about CBAM, carbon border adjustment mechanisms that got in place in 2026 and onwards. So this is growing to some extent. But on the other hand side, talking about the huge demand of India, energy demand of India, electricity-wise, on molecules, a growing demand. To what extent do you see also a role as an energy exporter that is also part of the strategy? Is there sort of competition of the different use cases also within the country, or is there room for all of these purposes from your perspective?
I think clearly, I think what India likes to do is, because there's, it depends on, like at this point, there's no carbon tax in India, so what India likes to do is what is right for the economy to get the lowest cost molecule. And what is interestingly scenario right now for us is green is lower than coal, green power, and green hydrogen potentially can be nearly on par with grey. But equally, India likes to keep the optionality open, that if we're able to work with the global market and take our low-cost green solutions and add value to other economies, and through that earn the forex value, and then still buy, the right cost molecules, right? So it's, can we export our premium green and buy lowest cost, value of whatever the color of the molecule is? I think India would like to keep both options open. I think, in fact, our biggest concern right now is this concept of, well, we're talking about ammonia or methanol, right? What is the standard that's driving that is not still properly defined globally. What really worries me is when I see in the IRA bill, they're talking about annual matching, right? So if you do annual matching of energy to make hydrogen, your carbon footprint is more than grey, right? So it takes about 10 kilos of CO2 to make hydrogen from gas. If you do annual matching, it'll take you 30 kilos, right? So you're doing more than grey. So our biggest concern is today is not about economic scale and delivery. This is something which we were mentioning to a few other bodies, that the standardization has to be thought through from from the right environmental reasons, not purely from a subsidy reasons, right? So the rush we are seeing for subsidies is to dilute standards. It's actually making India or other countries who could make those products at the right standard little bit losing out.
So we need, of course, the standardization, the certification to really build these green markets. That's what the EU, what other standards already offer. And the question is what markets will turn to what standards. Is the EU standard immediately the one that will be adopted globally, or are there other standards in competition to this one? One of the questions that might be also part of the strategy, and I will try again after Mr. Nicolin with you, Mr. Mansmann, to get a first feeling of what we might expect with the hydrogen strategy and also with the import strategy that we're all expecting. What can we already signal to our Indian guests? To what extent does Germany look into countries like India? I mean, we want to increase our indigenous hydrogen production, probably double it. That will need some help, some assistance, some subsidies probably as well. All the countries talking about off-takers, meaning who is actually bridging the cost gap. Is that only H2 Global? Are there other means, other bilateral, trilateral constellations they could think of? What could be new elements due to the existing puzzle?
Yeah, if you have a look especially to the German strategy, which is the German strategy, not the European one, it's a difference because we have to wait for what comes from Europe and what it means to the German market. But finally, the strategy is aware of the fact that Germany will be an importer of energy in a huge volume. So we expect in 2030 the need for hydrogen about 110 terawatt hours. And 70% of that needs to be imported, because our domestic production will not be bigger than 20-30%. And this situation will not change until 2045, when we want to be climate neutral. So we know that then 100% of German energy and raw material needs to be zero carbon. Because of that, of course, in the moment, we are looking very much for partners who can export energy. Because of that, for example, we have very interesting talks with Australia, which is a country which has not so many people. It's a big country by territory, but a quite small country by population, very advanced in technology, and this is, of course, a very promising partner. India, I think, is in a special situation. India, of course, is very interesting for us. It's, as I learned in the past weeks ago, the biggest country in the world. By population, yeah. But we also know, of course, that the Indian need for energy because of the Indian economic development will be very huge also. And we are not sure how much India can really wants to export energy. And of course, I'm quite sure every country in the future, in 10, 20 years, which can produce more energy than it uses for itself, will export it and they will find someone to sell it, to buy it. It's no problem. It's a good idea to produce a lot of energy. You will not have a problem with that. Germany had a problem because we know that we have no way of enough domestic production. So the partners we are looking at, of course, is Australia, it's Canada. You can look where does the German Minister for Economic travels to. Yeah? Canada, South America, Namibia, South Africa. Yeah. Western Africa, very promising. My ministry, the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, we have researchers in this way. It's the Potential Atlas Africa, where we scrutinized, I think, more than 30 countries in Africa about the potentials for green energy, and it's really huge. There is, I'm a physicist, and I can see it's really true. There is enough green energy in the world for the supply of the entire world. It's enough. Yeah, but it's not at the places where we need it. Yeah? We need the bridges from these places where energy production is cheap, very cheap. And of course, it makes sense to produce energy in Germany too, domestic production. For two reasons it's important. One reason, of course, it's always good to produce energy at the place you need it. And Germany needs a lot of energy. But it's expensive. It will be much more expensive in Germany, maybe double or 3 times more expensive than at the really good places to produce. And I think India has a lot of places in this country where the energy production is really, really cheap.
Taking up one concrete example, and I think you, Mr. Imut, mentioned the maritime sector. For ammonia, for other derivatives, methanol, there are different options, in fact. What hinders a sector like the maritime sector to make use of it? Is it all about cost? Is there any regulation needed by the industry itself? And what can partnering help? I mean, if India and Germany talk about this subject, is that something any bilateral partnerships could assist? Or what can be done to not only observe the existing problems, but really come one step further?
Yeah, I think there are different ways in which Germany and India could jointly promote this. For one, so the whole shipping industry is a bit outside of the Paris Agreement, which is a big issue. So everything is like negotiated at in the International Maritime Organization, and there we don't have really the goals that we need to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal that we agreed on in the Paris Agreement. So, for example, to negotiate jointly and there are signs that there will be an agreement on climate neutrality by 2050, maybe already this year, but then the next steps have to be taken, like, okay, they're thinking about market-based mechanisms, and then jointly work on, okay, how could they look like, etc. Another idea would be that, as more discussed in the aviation sector at the moment, but started to be discussed also in the shipping sector, is that maybe we actually, at least in the first years, don't really have to ship the green ammonia for example, between countries, but to then, for example, use the green ammonia in Europe to put it in the ships that then start shipping global goods to other places, but instead having like virtual certificates for the fuel that is used in a ship in India. So, for example, green ammonia put into a ship in India, and then the emission reduction is basically sold to, for example, European companies, logistics companies, etc. So this would help us to actually have time to build up the whole infrastructure to that we need to also transport green ammonia within Germany, to bring it to Germany, etc. But of course, it depends a bit on which usage sector you look at.
So rather than defining regional and then global markets, with a track and trace system, you can immediately kick off and try to bring in the willingness to pay into the market from the very beginning, and also involve the richer countries to push this development. I mean, this sounds great. We've done similar things in the electricity sector with green certificates. I know that is discussed for quite a while. It needs certification. What else would hinder us to start? And is that something that a handful of countries could begin with as a club, and others to join later? Or is that something that needs a huge framework from the very beginning?
I think it's an option, right? I mean, if you have this option to sort of have these, let's say, call them green fuel certificates, I think it makes sense. I think you have to be a bit careful in terms of how do you set this up, how do you make sure this is a transparent process without any issues we've seen in the carbon offsetting market, for example, right? So this needs to be avoided. Hence, there needs to be, I guess, proper regulation to do it. So I think it's one approach, but it can't be the only approach, because at the end of the day, we can't outsource our problem somewhere else. So I think we also have to make sure that we actually start decarbonizing our own backyard, right? So that means we will have to import molecules in the future to make sure that, hey, we start decarbonizing steel, chemicals, all the industries that have been mentioned before. So I think the approach of, yes, let's have this accounting scheme for others does work, but it cannot be the only factor, I feel.
Now, I promised that I open the question and open the floor for questions, and now that would be the time to do so. Please go ahead, and please say to whom you want to address the question. Oh, that's the mic.
Yeah, my question is to Mr. Mannesmann. On India, you made an observation that we are an energy-starved country, but we do have aspiration for energy export, and that's where the hydrogen export makes sense, because India has to create the marketplace, and if you supply in dollar or euro, you are able to borrow in dollar and euro. That brings down the cost of capital, and that is one of the reasons it makes competitive reason for India to be an exporter initially than to just consume locally. So it was an observation, and I would seek your comment also.
Do you want to comment immediately, or shall we collect one or two questions more? Yeah. Yep. Who else wants to comment on, or rather raise a question, please?
I am Kiran from Leading Navitas. I have a question. If I have an off-taker in Germany, and I know that my Indian partners, I can export 1 million tons ammonia to you. And I know that environmental point of view, it's very, very difficult. One of the guy I know in Hamburg port, oh, ammonia, be careful. There are a lot of things you have to go through. So how long is the procedure, or what constraints I get? So before I sell somebody in India, yeah, you can export it, but I have to find out what's going on here in Germany. Can you make some comments on that?
And that goes to, the question goes to?
Okay. Or anybody.
Anyone wants to join? Okay, last chance to add another question or comment. Anyone else who wants to contribute? Not at this stage. Okay. Let me bring it back.
Yes, as I understood, I started this chicken egg problem, as we call it. This is the problem we have in a lot of cases in this ramp up of the hydrogen and hydrogen derivative markets. And for that, of course, it's a problem. Yeah, to bring the future off-takers together with the ramp up of the production. For this, we have the H2 Global idea. This is an idea to finally, it's a financial mechanism who allows to the state to take the risks of future sellings. So you have the option now to make contracts and to be quite sure, and the risk is at the system. So the state takes the risk. This is one of the options for the government to help ramping up this problem. For the currency issue, I think it could be solved inside this kind of mechanism also. But I'm finding it, to be honest, not so much in this very specific problem. I'm the commissioner in the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, so it's all about, very much about innovation and educational problems. For that, I think we should have the experts from the BMWK.
Mr. Peterson, do you want to comment on?
Yeah, maybe on a couple of points. Yes, of course. If you can sort of have an offtake and you start doing your business in, let's say, US dollar or EU currency, where there's certainly a risk reduction associated with the financing cost. So that would certainly work. Regarding the second question, you mentioned, I think it goes down to red tape. How long does it take to get approval for an import terminal, for example? I think at the moment that's too long. So I mean, we have offshore wind approval times of 5 years, right? So on the other hand, we have seen with the LNG imports, this can go very quickly. So I think if the politics start to decide, hey, let's set priorities, let's get the regulation in place. And for ammonia, we do have the technical codes and standards, right? It's nothing new. We have installed and used ammonia for decades and decades and decades. So I think it's really educating the sort of bodies authorizing the approval processes, and then maybe making it sort of a priority and fast-tracking it.
You want to add? Yeah, because of the Germany is a country, of course, which became over the past decades quite slow. In my constituency, I have a road which was planned at the time around when I was born, and I'm 54 now, and they started the works this year, the construction, and we'll be ready when I got to retirement. And of course, we have a different time schedule for becoming climate neutral, but it's much more complicated than building roads. So we know that, the Chancellor knows that. This is very important because the Chancellery is one of the most pragmatic bureaucratic or ministries in Germany, and I'm very convinced that he will take care for what he calls the German velocity, and we are planning, and this is part of the national hydrogen strategy, which should have been ready at Christmas, to be honest. Yeah, but I hope we will get it till summer. But part of it is one thing is the import strategy, which will be an extra paper because it's needs to be more elaborated than just 2 or 3 pages inside the strategy. This is new. This was one of the outcomes of the discussion. And then the other thing is an hydrogen acceleration law, which wants to take the experience from the LNG terminals, which are really, when this government started, it's not so long ago, it's 1.5 years ago, my party wanted to build energy terminals, but the others didn't want. So it was not part of the contract, of the coalition contract, but nevertheless, they are already working now. So this country is able sometimes to be quick, and we want to copy that for the hydrogen strategy. Of course, this will cover more about domestic production than import, but together with the import strategy and the idea of standards and things like that, I hope this new law will give some more velocity so that we don't need to wait 5 or 10 years, but maybe 2 or 3 years. In the strategy, we want to have the changing point between development and ramp up of the market by 2030.
And will India be part of this import strategy? Is that something that you can already reveal?
I'm quite sure, yes.
Great. I see two hands. Ms. Dewood first. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I can understand the impatience, and we also, as German citizens, are often very impatient with our politicians. But I want to highlight a bit maybe why we are a bit slow sometimes in Germany. And I think in terms of hydrogen and green ammonia, etc., it's also maybe a bit important that we don't come into a gold rush with the hydrogen, but speed is not everything. We have to be smart, and what we do, this is a major transformation globally, and we have to make sure that this transformation is not only cannibalizing our energy transitions in the countries, all countries, but also the human development that we are aiming for and other aspects of our planet that we have to make sure we don't have very negative effects on it. But there are a lot of co-benefits as well. So just one example, water. We all know we need water to produce hydrogen. We need, and also for the biofuels that are at the same time a bit in the competition in some areas. And India is one of the most water-stressed countries of the world, and this will be even worse in the next decades. So we have to make sure that we all agree together, and this is one area where I think Germany, Europe, India and other countries can work together on, is coming up with standards, with criteria together, and not just us in Germany discussing about those criteria, but it's really important to have your views on that and to understand where you come from, and that you also decide, okay, this is where we want to make sure our own people can have a good life, and that there will be prosperity for all Indians.
So sharing experience with the standards that we've established, as well as also bringing, of course, all the technology and the competences from our companies to make this happen, what we're all talking about. Last word, due to time restrictions, to Mr. Colley before we close.
No, clearly, I think just want to bring another angle to this India-Germany partnership. So this partnership need not always be from an offtake supply perspective. Interestingly, I've been having some 3-4 interesting discussions where I've now started telling the off-takers that why don't you look at your growth plans for a global supply chain or global growth plans in India. So instead of just getting your ammonia to India, to Germany, or other clean energy products to Germany, as part of your global growth plans, can you also look at India? Because we can offer you that in India at the lowest cost. So that there could be another, because a global supply chain, there's a global migration of low carbon production and low cost production. That's a new globalization that's happening, right? So we're actually talking to one potential steel maker in Korea, where he wants to expand his new steel production in India, because he's saying instead of me getting ammonia to Korea and make it to hydrogen and do DRI there, I will do DRI in India and make green steel in India. Right? So India could take a new role as being an ecosystem for the low carbon power energy supplies across all the value chain, than always just being a supplier for a global perspective.
Thank you so much, and join me in applause for our panelists. Now, at the end of the session, first of all, I thank all the speakers. I thank you that have been so patient to listen and to contribute to it. Thank you to all the partners, the three, the Embassy, ThyssenKrupp Uhde, and the World Energy Council. And before we fully close and have the chance to go on with the discussions that were triggered by this afternoon, I think Mr. Sharma will add a last few words.
So just moving from the green hydrogen to sustainable food. So the year 2023 has been declared as International Year of Millet. So as part of this, Government of India is organizing a lot of events to promote the millet. Millet is a coarse grain which is very climate friendly, very nutritious and very healthy. In today's reception, we have few dishes prepared out of millet. I hope you will enjoy those dishes. Thank you. Please join us for dinner.